Hi Tamsin, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Looking forward to talking to you about gardening.
Yes, yeah, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk today about gardening and the effect on our physical and mental health. I mean, gardening is so beneficial in many ways, isn't it? And you've got the physical activity, you've also got the social activity of allotments and things like that. You've got the exposure to nature and sunlight. Sunlight lowers blood pressure as well as increasing our vitamin D levels. And obviously there's the fresh fruit and vegetables that are produced, which is a massive benefit to our health. Um, Also, when you're going on to the psychological benefits of plants and gardening, you're looking at the fact that it improves mood, and humans are generally much happier when they're and optimistic when they're outside and there's plenty of plants and nature. This in turn works to reduce stress and anxiety and boosts self-esteem. And I guess in all the time that you've been doing your gardening, you've probably experienced that yourself and in other people that you're working around.
Oh, absolutely. And more so now than ever with the pandemic and people being at home, gardening has really rescued people
Mm.
and helped people's mental health. I've spoken to a lot of people that suffer from anxiety and stress, and growing and just relaxing in your own garden has literally saved people. So I can't recommend it highly enough.
Mm.
And all the things you say, sort of the physical well-being. I don't know about you, but going to the gym, you've got to have all the gear. You've got the stress of parking the car. What machine do I use? You've got all that stale air in there. I mean, it suits some people. It's better to do that than nothing.
Mm.
But for me, if I go out to the garden for half an hour, I know I'll be out there 2 hours, and you'll burn off a lot more calories in a much more relaxed way. So it's incredibly good for people who want to lose weight, like you say, blood pressure levels. And the trick is with that is to do different things in the garden. So don't turn your compost heap for 2 hours. The trick is to do different jobs for a couple of hours, stop for a break, stop and enjoy the view, stop and look at nature. And so that, I think, for me, is absolutely key. If you're physically fit, you're also going to be mentally feeling better. I think the two come hand in hand to me. And
Yeah.
there are very few things that you do that offer you those two things. And I mean, during the lockdown, what's been so wonderful is people are growing from seed, which means that they have hope in the future. So gardening is all about looking ahead. So
Mm.
that is mentally very stimulating and incredibly good for you. It shows a lot of positivity, but also when things go wrong, that doesn't matter either, because it's all part of the journey, and you can always have another go. It's your space to do whatever you like. You can wear what you like in the garden, you can look dreadful, you can lie on the lawn. It's entirely your space to do what you like.
Yeah.
But something during the lockdown that's been really, really key is how important hospital gardens are to people, which has sort of proven this link that most of us know. I did a podcast with Mark Lane, who's the TV presenter on Gardener's World.
Mm.
And he had a car crash a few years ago and is now confined to a wheelchair. And he was telling me that it was really the hospital garden that saved his mental health, and gave him hope, and started him gardening.
Wow.
So
So
the evidence is
is there. And I was just thinking, if people don't have gardens, say they're living in a flat,
yeah,
there's, maybe it's worth looking at allotments and helping in communal gardens. And, there's other ways to experience a garden, isn't there?
exactly that. And I think what's so lovely is normally, if you live in a street, you'll find someone that is looking for gardening help.
Mm.
So if you have an elderly neighbour or someone that's not physically able and you want to create a garden, I'm sure most people would say, oh, I'd be delighted if you'd come and help me in the garden. You know,
Mm.
it's something that creates friendships and builds communities. And there's also things like you could volunteer to garden at, I don't know, a charity or a hospice, or there's normally somewhere you can go to garden. People rarely turn away gardeners or
Mm.
gardening help. But you're quite right. If you have a flat and you don't have the outside space, there are ways to enjoy plants. So there's windowsill plants, you can do window boxes, hanging baskets, house plants, incredibly good for stress.
Mm.
And actually, if you're working at home, this is really key. If you're working at home now, filling your workspace area with plants reduces static off the computer. It's known to give you more creativity. It reduces stress, as we say. It reduces dust levels, cleans the air. So I think if you've not got a garden, you're sitting at your computer all day, please fill that space with plants. Go and treat yourself to 2 or 3 house plants, and I think it will make the world of difference to everything that you do.
That's a really good idea. And there are many studies that have linked gardening to reducing symptoms of anxiety and depression, and it makes no odds, I guess, whether you're doing the looking after the plants in the house or outside the house. Whichever way you're doing it, I think it's probably the distraction, isn't it, which it helps to alleviate. You're moving away from the feelings, the low feelings that you're having, and putting your focus somewhere else, which gives you and a chance to actually release from where you are at that point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always pick flowers from the garden, you can see behind,
Mm.
for my desk. So even if you don't have time to have house plants, you know, a bunch of flowers from the garden makes all the difference on your desk.
Mm.
I think it's just about creating a good environment that's positive, that, you know, when you've just had a terrible phone call or a really stressful email, you
Mm.
know, look into a big vase of flowers. It sounds twee, but it
Mm.
will make the difference. It really, really will. And this is why so many charities such as Green Fingers, that builds gardens for children's hospices, Horatio's Garden, that builds gardens for people at spinal units across the country. This is why these charities have had such good results,
Mm.
because when we're hospitalised, the one thing that people say, I really want to see the sky, I want to see greenery, even if they're not gardeners, you know, and to be able to take people out into an outside space, I mean, it's absolutely life changing. And then the other thing that I find is fascinating is I think people have a really good conversation in a garden. You know, if you're sitting in a beautiful space, I think this is the best place to talk properly. I
Yeah.
think you have a deeper level of conversation. And I know from people that work in hospitals and have had to give bad news to people, and the hospital garden is a place that is, you know, a sensible place to go. It's very comforting. It's, I mean, it's a magical world. You know, if you can create a beautiful garden, it's just the answer to everything as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And fresh air, it's space, you're escaping your current brain state, whatever it is, or you have
Yeah.
the
And I
opportunity
think
to.
yeah, I think the other thing is I think people should, and what's lovely during the lockdown is I've noticed on Instagram and Twitter, people are very much more relaxed about their garden.
Mm.
Before, it was always like, oh gosh, how do I prune this and what color shall I put with this color? Now I'm finding that a lot of my followers are like, hang it, I love this purple and red, and I'm going to try this. And so I think people have really just realized, and it's just clicked, especially that we haven't been having so many visitors, that you can do what you like. So I think people have sort of released that creativity and put it into their garden.
Mm.
And I think that's such good fun. You're getting you know, plants put together in different ways, people sharing growing techniques. And that's the other thing about mental health, is that gardeners love to talk, they love to share ideas, they rarely tell you you're an idiot and you've got something wrong. So if you are feeling like you need a new hobby, you need new friends, I can honestly say there's garden clubs online, there's local garden clubs, and a lot of people assume, oh, it's only for sort of retired. Well, that it shouldn't be. We need to all start getting involved. And even if you start following gardeners on Instagram and interacting with them, the rewards are just great. And it's friendship. You rarely get any sort of negativity if you stick to gardening on social media.
Lovely. I shall investigate that a bit more. Actually, I haven't looked at any of the social media on the gardening, but yeah, I'll go that way. Thank you.
Yeah, you'll find lots of quirky videos of people experimenting. But I mean, the other thing is we were talking about creativity, but colour in the garden is key, and colour can change your mood. And I was reading a survey that Country Life did in May this year, about which front door is the best for you. Can you guess what came out top? What would you do for your door?
Are we talking about colour or design? We're talking about the
No,
colour, aren't
colour.
we? The
What
colour.
colour would you paint for?
I would go for a dark green.
Oh, right, okay. So blue came out the best.
Ah,
Any kind of blue, dark blue, pale blue, and then green came second. So sage green, olive greens, and then third was grey and black, and then fourth was plain wood. So it's
that
very interesting that blue is the way forward.
I wouldn't have guessed that, and that's really interesting. And I guess that moves on to looking at your garden and how your garden can actually sell your house in a way, can't it? Because
Oh,
you're using the different colours
absolutely.
and the different plants, and yeah, how do you feel about that? Do you think it can make that much difference?
Totally, absolutely, totally. When I lived in Dorset, I bought a small chalet style bungalow, which was up together, but the garden was a wreck, and it was all front garden. And I didn't spend a huge amount of money on it. I didn't do a lot of hard landscaping. I literally planted it. And I think that sold that house for me. I really, really do. And in 2000, I looked this up last night, 2017, so this is a while back now, the Telegraph did something about what a front garden adds to the property price. And back then they said it adds up to 20%. And I think that's true. Yeah, because
That's
if
massive.
you walk along the street in London or Poole or wherever you live, and you pass a house with a blue door and fantastic planters, and it makes you feel good. You think, wow, look at that. And again, during lockdown, people have used their front gardens. So I know a lot of my friends in London have spent more time sitting in their front garden because they've been able to talk to people. They've been sitting out there in the evening and having a drink, talking to their neighbour over the fence. Again, with the NHS clapping at 8 o'clock, the front garden became really important. So at last, I think people will think these gardens are worth looking after, because previous to this, it was worrying. Everyone was paving them over, parking a car there. And I appreciate parking is a major issue, but the front garden, if it's paved, if every front garden is paved, what we're doing is we're actually hugely increasing the problem of flooding, because that's a surface area where no water can penetrate through the soil. So really, long term, we all need to garden our front gardens, have gravel for our car where the water can escape, and make them attractive spaces so that we can sell or we can stay and enjoy the space.
So what tips do you have for people in terms of how they go? Is there a way that you would go about doing the gardening for the back or the front? is there a format that you would look at? How would
Yeah.
someone start?
I think with the front garden, you've got to think practical before you think beautiful. So basically, if you're trying to sell, you don't know who is going to buy. It could be a mum with a double pushchair. So
Mm.
you need to think, right, I need a decent path. So a path to the door, and direct to the door is always better. Nobody wants to do a wiggly walk to their front door with heavy bags of shopping. So that's something I would focus on, is the path to the door. Make it wide enough, make it safe, make it easy to walk on, and level. I think you're looking at lawns. If it's a small space, I love a lawn, so I'm always for lawns, but you have to think, will I be able to get the mower from the back to the front? Is it something I am going to mow? Is it just not worth it? Do I garden it all? Do I plant it all? You're also looking for scented plants in a front garden, most definitely.
Mm.
So that will really appeal when people visit. It's this wonderful scent. So why not grow your herbs in the front garden? Roses around the door. All the classic cliches basically work in a front
Mm.
garden.
Mm.
The other thing to think, if you're renting or you're moving, growing containers. Why not gravel the area and place containers? So although your seller, your buyer will think, wow, this is amazing. Unfortunately, when they move in, you'll have taken half of it with you, but it's done the job. It's shown them what the possibilities are. So
Mm.
it's not, you've said, this is what you can do with this space.
Mm.
You can't just lift your entire garden. I don't think buyers and estate agents, I don't think that's really on, but plants in containers you can lift.
Mm.
And the other thing not to forget is wheelie bins, push bikes. Where are they going to go? So if you can make a really nice wheelie bin store or shed, a little lock-up,
Yeah.
and maybe put a green roof on it, maybe paint it the same colour as your front door. I've got a real bugbear for wheelie bins. I just think people need to design them into their home.
Yeah.
So remove rubbish, remove the stuff that looks like you haven't got space. So if your
Mm.
bike's parked out the front, people are going to think, oh, that's an issue. Hide the bike, put the bike somewhere, make a little store for it. So it's think practical, think pretty, but also seasonal. So I know you put your house on the market in summer, it might not sell till Christmas. So what have you got for Christmas interest? Are you going to have a fabulous wreath on the door? Are you going to have winter pots? Do you have any winter shrubs? And I always like to get the estate agent to come and take photographs when the garden looks good. So if you're selling in the winter, I don't know how they would feel about this because I've never been an estate agent. I would be tempted to say, could you come and, I'm going to sell with you. Could you come and take some photographs in the summer? Because it just looks amazing.
Mm.
So, when you're walking past an estate agent window and you see roses around the door, you're almost halfway in, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Or you need to make sure you've taken some pictures if you haven't asked the
Yeah.
estate agent. Just get lots of. Are there any particular plants so I really like the idea of the individual containers. If you were
Yeah.
gonna plant in spring, summer for a plant that would be good for the winter, are there a couple that you could advise?
Right, let's just think. If you're in a busy street
Mm.
and you want to create a barrier between you and the pavement,
Mm.
I would suggest shrubs like berberis that are quite prickly, so they look pretty,
Mm.
but they give you that sort of defensive layer.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, there's so many, so for spring and summer, something with a bit of height, that so if you're in a south facing spot and you're by the sea, something like a cordyline, you could go, which has got lovely spiky strappy leaves. You could go really tropical. You could have big containers full of cannas and banana plants. Even if you've got the south facing spot, you could really be the showstopper in the street, which would give you summer interest.
Mm.
Spring is harder because things tend to be more low growing, but I would definitely plant pots of tulips in the autumn, so that you've got tulips in May. You've got an amazing display. So plant them in the autumn, keep them around the back, and just bring them around the front in the pots for May. And again, do that with lilies for summer. So bulbs are absolutely brilliant because they're really easy. They can go in pots or in the border. They're not very expensive, and all they want is a bit of sunshine. So bulbs in the autumn. And in April, if you're really unsure about gardening, you don't have a high budget, just buy some hardy annual seeds, so poppies, love in the mist, and scatter it in the garden, because they will just pop up. I threw a packet of poppy seed in my garden, and now I've got about 50 poppies just about to come up, and I literally just scattered the packet. So it's not about big budgets, actually. It's about being inventive and adding colour in any way that you can.
Lovely. Lovely. I like the idea of the poppies.
Yeah.
Actually, I have got poppies coming up in containers at the minute, and sunflowers, which wasn't supposed to happen, because we bought some seeds and they turned. We thought they were lettuce, and they turned out to be to be sunflowers
That's
and
brilliant.
poppies. But it's just beautiful. Yeah. So
Yeah, it does make a difference. I mean, the other thing to consider, if you're a really fanatical gardener, and you love your garden, I've known some people overcomplicate their garden. There's so much going on and it scares people. This is particularly true of back gardens. So if you've lifted the whole lawn, you've got hundreds of paths, loads of flower beds, intricate planting everywhere. If a family is coming to look at that garden, they're just going to look at it and go, oh no, there's no lawn. I can't play football here. Where are we going to sunbathe? You've got to think, what sort of person is going to buy your house? It's unlikely to be a completely fanatical gardener. It's more likely to be a family. And people that open their gardens to the NGS, for example, and have created an incredible garden over 20 years, believe it or not, they can be really hard places to sell, because people are terrified. They think, crikey, I'm never going to keep this garden up. I mean, sometimes they'll sell like a shop because the right person walks in. So if you're buying a property purely to sell in a few years' time, think about the market and think, right, okay, I know it's boring to have borders around the edge and an area of lawn in the middle, but actually that is what most people want to live with, for practicality's sake. So do think about the buyer that you're hoping to get.
Good point. Good point. Thank you for that. Okay, that's really good tips there, and thank
Yeah,
you so much for sharing that. And particularly, you
that's all
don't think
right.
about the wheelie bins and things like that, do you? But you have to think about
Yeah,
all of these aspects, and you've covered that. So thanks,
yeah.
Tamsin, and we look forward to talking to you again.
No
And
problem. It's been a pleasure. But I really do believe if you put effort into your garden and your environment, you will get back. You will feel so good and so positive about yourself. So the two sounds like two strange subjects to link together, but they are so entwined.
absolutely. No, thank you. Okay, we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.